Hello and welcome to Note by Note. I'm Tom Spencer, and this is a podcast about songs that I love. Songs that stop me in my tracks and remind me just how powerful music can be. Some of the songs we cover, they may be familiar to you, some might be brand new, but each one is worth slowing down. So let's jump into it. Today, it's Francis and the Lights' See Her Out. In parentheses, that's just life. It's a track built on almost nothing. A looping synth and some chords, a simple groove, but the feeling it creates is enormous. It's hypnotic and alive. It's one of those rare songs that feels bigger than it has any right to, and I want to show you why. For me, it's forever tied to a single TV moment, the end of Nobody Wants This. A kiss that feels like a rebellion, like warmth and love. The music swells, the synth riff explodes, and then the season cuts to black. Every time I hear it, I feel that same rush. I actually first found Francis and the Lights through Bon Iver. At the time, I'd played Bon Iver's first two records to death. That's all I listened to. And I was really starving for anything even loosely connected to him. So I went searching for collaborations, guest spots, whatever I could find. And that led me to three songs that I threw into like a little Spotify playlist. James Blake's I Need a Forest Fire with Bon Iver, Fall Creek Boys Choir, also James Blake with Bon Iver, and Friends by Francis and the Lights featuring Bon Iver. And that little playlist, it basically became my commute soundtrack back in, it must have been 2014 or 2015. And Friends in particular, I loved that track. I listened the crap out of it. So fast forward a few years, I guess around 10 years, and I stumble across See Her Out, and I'm floored by it. And it took me a while to even realize that this was the same guy, Francis and the Lights. And part of the reason it's kind of funny, on the album, this tune comes from the album Farewell Starlight. And See Her Out is the opener, and Friends is buried way down at track 9. So whenever I put the album on in the car or, whatever I was doing, I rarely made it through to connect the dots. Until one day I finally did. And here were two songs that I loved living on the same record. And I didn't realize for the longest time. And that, to me, that kind of sums up Francis in general. He's elusive. He makes these sparse, minimal songs that they somehow feel massive. And then he just disappears. If you go look up his YouTube channel, he only has 11 videos total. And that's not because he just started this channel with no backlog or anything. That's not the case at all. The oldest video is 17 years old. And the newest one is from a few months ago, maybe 6 or 8 months ago. And that's it. He's this brilliant songwriter and performer and producer, and people want more, and I want more. There's even this secret, I'm doing air quotes over here, secret YouTube channel that people found called Practicing the Piano, all lowercase, one word. And it's clearly him. The earlier videos on the channel, they even show his face, so you know for sure it's him. But if you only watched the newer ones, it's just hands at a keyboard, faceless and anonymous, so you might not know. And that feels so Francis. Just like brilliant, but out of reach, a little out of reach. I first heard See Her Out in the Netflix show Nobody Wants This. My wife and I were on the couch one evening doing something we rarely do, try a brand new show instead of putting on, The Office or Parks and Rec for the 100th time. This one, it stars Kristen Bell and Adam Brody. She's a podcaster, he's a rabbi, and they're falling in love while living in these two totally different worlds. Right away, we were hooked. And then comes the season 1 finale. They've just essentially broken up. It's kind of up in the air, but we think they've broken up. And she's left a bat mitzvah that they were at, and she took the shuttle back to her car. And when she gets off the bus, it pulls away, and then suddenly he's there, standing next to her car. He missed the shuttle, and he ran the whole way there just to meet her. And that's when See Her Out, it sneaks in. So subtle and quietly at first, just like hiding under the scene. And it's still there, and they talk a little, and finally they kiss. And the music doesn't just swell, it explodes right on the lyric. But that's just life. That synth loop, it crashes in, huge and undeniable. And then, like I said before, boom, cut to black. Season over. It was such a perfect way to end the show. And at the time, we didn't know that there was going to be a second season. So I thought that was like just the perfect ending of a show. It really, it gives me goosebumps every time and like chills. When they have that kiss, it's just a giant feeling of like, yes, just be together already. That whole season of tension, are they going to make it work? It just all melts away in that moment. He even says, I know I can't have both. And then he kisses her, choosing her instead of the life of certainty that he's been building. It felt so rebellious, but like young love, reckless and raw, but also hopeful. And when the credits rolled, what stuck with me wasn't just the scene and it wasn't just the song. It was how perfectly they all fused. The acting, the cinematography, the music, it all just locked together so perfectly. And then later, when I listened to See Her Out on its own, I realized obviously the song didn't just work in the show. It carries that same rush by itself. It's minimal, it's simple, but it's powerful enough to stand completely on its own. So now I want to talk about the lyrics a little bit. I don't want to go in depth and get academic or try to analyze these lyrics, but I want to talk about some that just kind of stood out to me. And the first one is the opening line is what really grabs me every time. He says, just give me information, tell me everything. And the repetition, it doesn't feel poetic, it feels panicked. It's impatient. It's like someone refreshing their phone over and over, waiting for a message or an email, and it just hasn't come yet. And there's a real urgency in the way Francis sings it. Like, if he could know something, like if anything, it would be better than sitting there with the not knowing. And then there's another line, but that's just life. I lived it twice. And I'll be honest, I don't fully get it. But I think that's kind of the point. But that's just life. That makes sense. That's just life. That's the way it is. It's I lived it twice. I don't know, it gives me the feeling of living that same moment over and over. The same emotions, the same patterns, the same situations, just replayed. It's confusing, but emotionally, I think it rings true. And that's why another line, oh God, I hope she escapes. It hits so hard. It sounds like someone wishing freedom for another person, even if that freedom means leaving, maybe them, or breaking out of a cycle that they keep repeating. And then when he follows with the line, the whole damn world is a cage, it feels like so painfully honest. Because sometimes, even when things are going well in your life, life can still feel restricting. You can still be put in a box. You're doing all the right things, but you just feel like you're spinning your wheel, trying to move forward, but stuck at the same time. So those are just some of the lyrics that jumped out to me. Now on to the actual song. One of the most important things about See Her Out is that almost everything in the song traces back to that opening synth loop. That's what I'm going to keep calling it. The opening, it starts with this synth, and it's that same few notes over and over, the same few bars. And while technically it obviously is a melody, it's, notes that go one right after the other, it doesn't really behave like a melody, or at least not the way you're used to. It feels more atmospheric than melodic. It's like setting up a vibe or a feel as opposed to just being music. It's really fractured and it's a little awkward. It's full of big jumps and it never really settles. The motion is interesting because at first it feels like it's rising. The loop, it starts low and then jumps an octave and then immediately jumps almost another octave and lands on a note that feels really uneasy. So it goes from an A, up an octave to an A, and then up to a G sharp, just shy of an A, landing on that dissonant seventh tone. There's upward movement there, but because it repeats exactly the same way over and over, it like feels stuck. It's reaching up, but it's not going anywhere. That contradiction, the rising motion but with no progress, it kind of becomes the emotional backbone of this song, at least to me. And early on, that synth is basically everything. When the song begins, there's nothing grounding it. There's no harmonic cushion underneath. When the vocals come in, instead of resolving that tension, it just kind of layers on top of it and makes things feel more uneasy. There's almost this like vocal hazy underneath the main lines as well. It's like a mumbling that you hear, half formed sounds that you can't quite make out. It's subtle, but it's important. I think it matters. It makes the whole thing feel even more restless. Like there's noise in the background of your own thoughts. What's key is that the tension isn't just coming from all the repetition. It's kind of baked into the notes themselves. Throughout the whole loop, it never quite lands where you expect it to. And even when it feels like it could resolve, it doesn't. And then finally, when it does resolve, I'm doing air quotes again, it just circles right back into that same uneasy shape, immediately going back to the A, G sharp. If the synth resolved more often, I think the song would lose its edge entirely. That's its refusal to settle. That's kind of the point I'm feeling here. Structurally, this song is strange also in kind of a really effective way. At first, it feels like it might follow a typical verse-chorus structure, but the more you listen, the more that idea, it really breaks down. That opening vocal section over the synth loop, it feels like the only true verse. After that, the song moves between just two main ideas. There's the section with the "If You See Her Out There" lyrics from the title, "See Her Out," where the synth loop, it drops out, and then everything turns into these long, sustained chord pads. When I was writing notes on this song, I kept calling this chorus A. It has the same basic harmonic world. The chords are basically the same, but suddenly there's no movement. It's really calm on the surface, but it's also a little unsettling. Like time slowed down, but way too much. And then there's the "But That's Just Life" section, also from the title. And I was calling that chorus B, where the synth loop, it comes back in full force, and all that anxiety from the beginning, it definitely returns. And what's really fascinating is that the song, it keeps swapping all these elements around. Near the end, that "But That's Just Life" section comes back, but this time it's not over the synth loop, it's over those chord pads, so they switched it up. So it seems like even the song's own internal rules, they aren't stable. The lyrics and the accompaniment that you'd expect to go together, they suddenly don't. And that instability, it keeps you slightly off-balanced the entire time. Melodically, the vocal follows that same emotional logic that I talked about before. In the opening, the melody, it keeps climbing, always kind of like reaching up, but never landing. And then in the "If You See Her Out There" section, the lines, they tend to fall down, they inflect down, almost like a release that doesn't really fully satisfy. Then back in the "But That's Just Life" section, the melody, it goes back into that rising motion again. What's really striking is how often the vocal rhythm really clashes with what's underneath it. Over that synth loop, everything feels frantic on top of frantic. The melody and the loop, they don't ever line up cleanly. But somehow all that tension, it works. And then over the stagnant chords, those chord pads, the vocal, it stays rhythmically interesting, but now it's floating over something like completely unmoving. And like I said before, it's so unstable that it almost feels like there's no time. In both cases, there's friction, but it's different, and nothing ever really locks into place. Rhythmically, the song, it plays a similar trick. When the loop is present, there's at least some steady motion. Even if it's, fractured and really anxious, your ear, it has something to follow. But when the song shifts into those chord padding sections, the rhythm, it feels suspended. Everything is technically in time, but it feels like the floor drops out from under you. There's nothing for your ear to grab onto. You're just floating and waiting. And that waiting is pretty crucial because the song, it resists like opening up for as long as it possibly can. It's again doing the same thing over and over. It doesn't feel truly open until late towards the end. And even then, it barely even allows it. After the second time through the "But That's Just Life" section, over the chords this time, everything gets really mellow, almost too still. And then out of nowhere, the synth blasts back in with this awesome like 1-bar solo. And that moment, that's the closest thing this song has to a true like release. Nothing about the harmony changes. The tension doesn't really resolve, but the notes, they finally do something different, like really interesting. After so much repetition, that single bar of change, it feels huge. It feels enormous. It's not a big payoff, but it's a brief loosening of the grip that the song has had. In one breath, it's there, and then it's gone. The solo goes right back into the loop. And that's why the moment works. It feels like you earned it, not because it's big or flashy, but because it's different. It's the only time the song truly lets the notes breathe and do its own thing, and it only lasts for like 1 or 2 seconds. The production plays a huge role in all of this too. During the synth loop sections, everything feels really close inside your head. If you listen to the song with headphones, it's like it's right there. It's very present. There's space between the sounds, but it's still really intimate. And then during the chordal section, everything really starts to expand and contract. There's real crescendos and decrescendos. The chords grow and shrink. They brush up against each other, but they're never really touching. Even when things widen like that emotionally, it's really subtle. Nothing in this song is abrupt. Everything is really restrained. And Francis's voice, it sits right in the middle of all this tension. In the give me information and if you see her out there sections, his delivery, it feels more conversational, almost like he's just thinking out loud. But then in the but that's just life section, his voice becomes totally melodic, but still controlled. And again, he almost never resolves phrases cleanly. Everything is left hanging. When you step back and you look at this song as a whole, everything is working towards the same idea. Repetition, restraint, unresolved motion. Musically, it mirrors the feeling of like being stuck, waiting, circling, refreshing a phone, begging for information, hoping something will change. And when the song finally opens up, it doesn't feel like an escape. It feels like a brief moment of relief. Just enough to remind you what the release feels like before dropping you right back into that tension again. That's why I See Her Out, it feels emotionally larger than it is. So much feeling comes from so few elements repeated over and over. The song, it doesn't overwhelm you, it just kind of keeps you there, waiting, until even the smallest change, it feels really massive. So now I want to spend some time and talk a little bit about the music video as well, because I find this really interesting. The music video for See Her Out, it doesn't really feel like a performance, at least, not a musical one. Sometimes in a music video, you see the band actually playing the song at some points. That never happens here. This one feels more like a piece of art or like a statement. The whole video is just Francis walking away from the camera down a sidewalk in what I have to assume is New York City. That's what it looks like. It's one continuous shot the entire time. No cuts, no spectacle, just him walking. And what really struck me is like the pacing. He walks slowly during that synth riff in the beginning, like almost in time with it, or basically in time, and then suddenly shifts into this really awkward, like double time walk during different sections. And it's not a natural pace. It's uncomfortable to watch. And I actually tried to walk, listening to the song at that pace, and it's uncomfortable to walk. It's awkward. And it's really intentional when you're watching the video. It feels on purpose. Like his body is more responding to the music other than the rules of how you're supposed to walk through a city. And that's the thing with this video. I have to assume everything is done on purpose because it was made this way, right? So you have to have that assumption. At one point, for an example, there's a tiny musical interjection. It kind of goes like, zzz. It's barely noticeable. And right at that moment, Francis takes a little sidestep. It looks almost accidental, like a coincidence, or like he took a weird step. But the more you watch it, the more it feels precise. It's perfectly in time with that musical interjection. It's like he's treating even the smallest musical moments as something worth responding to physically. The city itself, to me, it doesn't feel very symbolic. It's just the backdrop. It's where he is. But near the end, he has to pass under this scaffolding that you sometimes see in New York, where they're working on the building. So they're build scaffolding with a path so you can still walk on the sidewalk. And it's hard to not think of the line, the whole damn world is a cage, because in that moment, he looks like he's in a cage while in New York City. Even if it wasn't intentional, the image lines up in a way that it feels It's impossible to ignore. And then there's the big release, which I talked about musically, that 1-bar solo, which again is weird. It happens earlier than you might expect in the video. He's in that scaffolding and he breaks out into a run and the song starts opening up. And a few seconds later, he crosses the street and throws himself into a cartwheel or like a front handspring, and he lands in a full split right in the middle of the road. It's impressive, but the timing was off. That musical moment happens while he's still running, getting to his spot, and then he performs. And I always think, like, did he miss the mark? Was he off, or was that the point? I don't know. It's hard to tell. What I love most is what happens next. Francis, he gets up, he does a full spin, he does a few cool little dance moves in the middle of the road, and then he just keeps walking down the sidewalk as if nothing out of the ordinary has happened at all. The camera peels away from him, finally moving, and goes back up the sidewalk that they were coming. And that's the video. Definitely worth going and checking out. When See Her Out ends, when I'm done listening, I always kind of feel pumped up. Like I want to hit replay immediately. There's like such a momentum to it. Even though it can feel frantic, it's still energizing. It leaves me wanting to stay in that world a little bit longer. And if that's how you're feeling too, the next step, it feels pretty obvious. The song is the front door. It's the first track to the album Farewell Starlight, which is absolutely worth sitting with front to back. May I Have This Dance is another highlight on the record. And there's a quieter, even more like reflective side of Francis in the track My City's Gone. Those are two I would definitely recommend checking out. And then if you want to hear some variation, there is the May I Have This Dance remix featuring Chance the Rapper. That's a great next place to go as well. This is the kind of song that it doesn't just stand on its own. It points outward. It makes you curious. It makes you want to follow the thread and see where it leads. And for me, that's also part of what makes it so special. So that's going to do it for me on this tune. If this song, if it means something to you or if it's brand new, I'd love to know what you take away from it. How did you discover it and what makes it stick for you? Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time for another song.